January 27th, 1945. Dawn breaks over the frozen plains of southern Poland near the town of Oświęcim. A bitter wind howls through the barbed wire as Soviet soldiers from the 60th Army of the 1st Ukrainian Front advance cautiously toward the gates of Auschwitz-Birkenau. The air is thick with the stench of death and decay. Rifle barrels glint in the pale light as they breach the perimeter. What they uncover inside shatters the human soul. Emaciated figures in striped pajamas, piles of skeletal bodies, and the remnants of the largest killing machine in history. This is the moment the world begins to confront the unimaginable, the Holocaust, where humanity teetered on the brink of crisis. But to understand this end, we must journey back to the beginning. In the early 1930s, Germany was a nation reeling from the aftermath of World War I. The Treaty of Versailles had imposed crushing reparations, hyperinflation ravaged savings, and unemployment soared. Into this void stepped Adolf Hitler, a failed artist turned charismatic orator, leading the National Socialist German Workers' Party, the Nazis. On January 30, 1933, Hitler was appointed chancellor. Within months, he consolidated power through the Enabling Act, transforming Germany into a dictatorship. But at the heart of Nazi ideology was a poisonous hatred, anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism wasn't new. It had festered in Europe for centuries, rooted in religious prejudice, economic scapegoating, and pseudo-scientific racism. Christians had long blamed Jews for the death of Jesus, leading to pogroms and expulsions. In the 19th century, racial theories emerged, portraying Jews as an inferior, parasitic race threatening Aryan purity. Hitler amplified this in his manifesto, Mein Kampf, written during his imprisonment after the failed 1923 beer hall putsch. He viewed Jews as the ultimate enemy, responsible for communism, capitalism, and Germany's defeat in World War I. The Jew, he wrote, is the ferment of decomposition in peoples. This wasn't mere rhetoric, it was the blueprint for genocide. The Nazis wasted no time. On April 1, 1933, they orchestrated a nationwide boycott of Jewish businesses. Stormtroopers, brown-shirted SA thugs, painted yellow stars of David on shop windows, scrawling "Jews out" and "Germans defend yourselves, don't buy from Jews." Crowds jeered as Jewish shop owners stood helplessly by. This was just the start. Over the next few years, over 400 anti-Jewish laws were enacted. The Nuremberg Laws of 1935 stripped Jews of citizenship, forbidding marriages or sexual relations between Jews and Aryan Germans. Jews were barred from professions, schools, and public spaces. Signs proliferated. Imagine the life of a young Jewish girl in Berlin during this time. Let's take Anne Frank, though her story unfolds later. Born in 1929, Anne grew up in a loving family, but by 1933, her father, Otto, sensed the danger and fled to Amsterdam. For those who stayed, daily life became a nightmare of humiliation. Children were expelled from schools, taunted by classmates indoctrinated with Nazi youth programs like the Hitler Youth. Propaganda films like The Eternal Jew depicted Jews as vermin, subhuman creatures plotting world domination. Joseph Goebbels, the minister of propaganda, masterminded this hate machine, ensuring every radio broadcast, newspaper, and school lesson reinforced the message. Violence escalated. On November 9th to 10th, 1938, Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass, unleashed terror across Germany and Austria. Triggered by the assassination of a German diplomat by a Jewish teenager, Nazis and civilians smashed over 7,500 Jewish businesses, burned 267 synagogues, and murdered at least 91 Jews. 30,000 Jewish men were arrested and sent to concentration camps like Dachau, the first established in 1933 for political prisoners. Released only if they promised to emigrate, many did, but where? Borders closed. The Evian Conference in 1938 saw 32 nations refuse to increase Jewish immigration quotas. The world watched,
but did little. By 1939, about half of Germany's 500,000 Jews had fled, but the rest were trapped. On September 1, 1939, Hitler invaded Poland, igniting World War II. Poland, home to 3.3 million Jews, Europe's largest Jewish community, fell in weeks. The Nazis divided it. Western parts annexed, eastern under Soviet control via the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, and the central general gouvernement as a dumping ground for undesirables. Immediately, Jews were herded into ghettos, overcrowded, walled-off urban prisons where starvation and disease ran rampant. The Warsaw Ghetto, sealed in November 1940, crammed 400,000 people into 1.3 square miles. Families lived in single rooms, rationed to 184 calories a day, less than a slice of bread. Typhus epidemics killed thousands. Yet, amid the horror, resilience flickered. Secret schools operated, underground newspapers circulated, and cultural events preserved dignity. As one ghetto resident wrote in a hidden diary, "We are not beasts, we are human beings." But the Nazis aimed for more than isolation.
On June 22, 1941, Operation Barbarossa launched. 3 million German troops invaded the Soviet Union, conquering vast territories with millions of Jews. Behind the front lines came the Einsatzgruppen, mobile killing squads of SS, police, and auxiliaries. In pits and ravines, they massacred entire communities. At Babi Yar near Kyiv on September 29th to 30th, 1941, over 33,000 Jews were shot in 2 days, their bodies tumbling into a ravine. By 1943, these squads had murdered up to 2 million Jews at others, often with local collaborators' help. Witnesses described the horror: victims stripped naked, lined up, machine-gunned. The ground moved for days from the wounded buried alive. These killings were inefficient for the Nazis' grand plan. At the Wannsee Conference on January 20, 1942, Reinhard Heydrich outlined the final solution: the systematic extermination of 11 million European Jews. Bureaucrats discussed logistics over brandy, reducing lives to statistics. The machinery of death accelerated. Killing centers built in occupied Poland far from German eyes. Chelmno, operational from December 1941, used gas vans, trucks where exhaust fumes killed those inside. Then came the Operation Reinhardt camps, Belzec, Sobibor, and Treblinka, designed solely for murder. At Treblinka, from July 1942 to October 1943, 870,000 Jews perished, mostly in gas chambers disguised as showers. Victims arrived by train, deceived with signs like transit camp. Sorted, stripped, shaved, they entered the chambers. Carbon monoxide or Zyklon B pellets released poison gas. Bodies were burned in open pits or crematoria to hide evidence. Auschwitz-Birkenau near Oswiecim became the epicenter. Expanded from a concentration camp in 1940, it grew to include Birkenau with 4 gas chambers, killing up to 6,000 daily. Dr. Josef Mengele, the angel of death, conducted selections on the ramp, left for labor, right for gas. Twins, dwarves, and others faced his pseudo-medical experiments, sterilizations, injections, amputations without anesthesia. Survivor Eva Kor recalled Mengele injecting her with unknown substances, leaving her feverish and near death, while her twin sister Miriam suffered lifelong effects. Life in the camps was a descent into hell. Prisoners, Jews, Roma, Poles, Soviet POWs, homosexuals, Jehovah's Witnesses, disabled people, were tattooed, shorn, and clad in rags. Forced labor in quarries or factories like IG Farben's synthetic rubber plat at Auschwitz-Monowitz meant 12-hour shifts on starvation rations. Kapos, prisoner overseers, enforced brutality. Disease, beatings, and selections culled the weak. In the euthanasia program, T4, starting 1939, over 200,000 disabled Germans were gassed, a precursor to the Holocaust. Not all victims were Jews. The Nazis targeted Roma, up to 500,000 killed,
3 million Soviet POWs starved or worked to death, and millions of Slavs deemed subhuman. But Jews were the obsession. Nearly 2/3 of Europe's 9 million wiped out. Resistance emerged against impossible odds. In ghettos, underground groups smuggled food and arms. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising in April 1943 saw 750 fighters hold off 2,000 Germans for a month with pistols and Molotov cocktails. "If we die, let us die as free men," declared leader Mordecai Anielewicz. The ghetto was razed, but the revolt inspired. At Sobibor in October 1943, prisoners killed guards and escaped. 300 fled, though many were recaptured. Treblinka saw a similar revolt in August 1943. Partisans in forests, like the Bielski brothers, saved over 1,200 Jews. Hiding offered slim hope. Anne Frank's family concealed in an Amsterdam annex for 2 years, betrayed in 1944. Anne died in Bergen-Belsen, her diary immortalizing the human spirit. "In spite of everything, I still believe that people are really good at heart." Righteous Gentiles risked all. Oskar Schindler saved 1,200 Jews via his factory. Raoul Wallenberg issued protective passports in Budapest. In Denmark, citizens ferried 7,000 Jews to Sweden in boats. But rescuers were exceptions. Indifference or collaboration was the norm. As Allies advanced, the Nazis intensified killings. In 1944, 437,000 Hungarian Jews were deported to Auschwitz in 8 weeks, most gassed on arrival. Death marches evacuated camps. Prisoners trudged through snow, shot if they fell. At least 250,000 died in these final months. Liberation came piecemeal. Soviets freed Majdanek in July 1944, finding gas chambers intact, the first undeniable proof. Auschwitz on January 27, 1945, 7,000 survivors amid 1.1 million murdered. U.S. troops liberated Buchenwald, April 11th, Dachau, April 29th. British entered Bergen-Belsen, April 15th, where 60,000 prisoners languished, 13,000 dying post-liberation from disease. General Eisenhower visited Ohrdruf, ordering documentation. "Let the world see what happened here." The war ended May 8, 1945, VE Day. But for survivors, the nightmare lingered. Displaced persons, DPs, camps housed 250,000 Jews, many stateless. Pogroms in Poland, like Kielce in 1946, 42 Jews killed, drove emigration. The Nuremberg trials, 1945 to 1946, prosecuted 22 top Nazis, 12 hanged, including Göring, who suicided. Subsequent trials convicted thousands, but many escaped justice via rat lines to South America. The Holocaust claimed 6 million Jewish lives, 1.5 million children, plus 5 to 11 million others, Roma, disabled, Poles, Soviets. Communities vanished, Yiddish culture decimated. Survivors like Elie Wiesel, author of Night, bore witness. "For the dead and the living, we must bear witness." Yet denial persists, claims of exaggeration or hoax refuted by mountains of evidence, documents, photos, testimonies. Myths like Jews weren't gassed ignore Zyklon B records. Hitler didn't know defies his speeches. Personal stories humanize the statistics. Take Gerda Weissman-Klein, who survived a 350-mile death march. "I prayed not for myself, but that humanity would never again witness such cruelty." Or Ben Lesser, a Dachau survivor. "I saw the chimneys smoking, smelled the burning flesh. How can anyone deny this?" The Holocaust exposed humanity's darkest impulses, how ordinary people, doctors, engineers, bureaucrats, became killers through propaganda, obedience, and greed. Milgram's experiments later showed how authority compels evil. It warns against rising anti-Semitism today, from online hate to attacks on synagogues. Remembrance is vital. Museums like Yad Vashem and the USHMM preserve artifacts, shoes from Majdanek, a mountain of loss, diaries from ghettos. International Holocaust Remembrance Day, January 27th, honors victims. Education combats denial. As survivors fade, their voices echo in films like Schindler's List and Shoah. But questions haunt. Why didn't the Allies bomb Auschwitz rails? Intelligence knew by 1942, yet priorities lay elsewhere. The St. Louis ship, carrying 937 Jews in 1939, turned away by Cuba and the U.S., saw many perish. Indifference killed as surely as gas. The Holocaust wasn't inevitable. It stemmed from choices, hate chosen over humanity. In crisis, it tested the world, revealing failures but also heroism. As we reflect, remember, it began with words, laws, then silence. Never again must we allow such darkness.
As the gates of Auschwitz swung open that frozen January dawn in 1945, the world glimpsed the abyss of human depravity. Yet from the ashes rose a vow: never forget. The Holocaust, humanity in crisis, teaches that silence in the face of hatred is complicity. Honor the victims by standing against prejudice today, for in remembering, we reclaim our shared humanity. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more stories that matter.